Good morning, everyone. Well, we're opening and welcome you to the 18th Protecting Mother Earth Conference. This is for the people gathering. We of the Indigenous Environmental Network, we just happen to sponsor it, but it's for the people. We started our first one in 1990. Anyone here were present in 1990 on the Dine territories in Dilcon chapter? Anyone were there that are here now? Oh, one, Danny Billy. The Billies traveled all the way to that. That was our first one in 1990. In 91, it was at Bear Butte. And a lot of our Lakota and our Northern Cheyenne, Arapaho peoples, they were there and hosted it. Those were years of toxic waste dumping, nuclear waste dumping, mining. It was a time when an issue became very, very important, when there were studies in this country that's found that there was environmental racism. Racism existed around the failure of the U.S. federal government to protect the environment of not only indigenous nations, tribal nations, but people of color, black, brown, Asian, even poor white folk communities like in the southeast and the mining. So there was reports that were reported on how corporations were building these toxic waste facilities in people of color communities and indigenous communities. There's a whole history there for those that you do research. The data is there. And here we are, years later, the 18th, in 2024, and we're still hearing stories of this legacy, not the legacy only, but still continuing to this day. So we were asked to come back here to the homelands of the people here, and Missy's going to tell a little history of that. So the principal chief that we have met with, we meaning the Indigenous Environmental Network and the Eastern Cherokee Organization, ECO, we are the ones that are helping sponsor this for the people. This is your gathering, So Missy's I'm gonna have her welcome you on behalf of her peoples here, the principal chief, if he shows up, because he's got a busy schedule, he's going to come up, and she's going to introduce also one of their celebrities that's on her right. But I'm going to turn it over now to our host, and she's going to welcome you in her way.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Crowe, and I am the Indigenous Just Transition Organizer for the Indigenous Environmental Network. And I am also a member of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians here from the Qualla boundary. And before we start, I want to introduce, I want to brag on her some. Hey, I don't want to embarrass her. Our Cherokee sister, Dvdaya swimmer, I'm going to invite her to come up and sing our Eastern Band Cherokee anthem. But before I want to just give you a little background of Miss Dvdaya is a rising junior at Cherokee High School. Miss Dvdaya swimmer is also a three-time state champ, three-time state cross-country state champion, 800 meter state champion. Miss Dvdaya swimmer was also on our state won a championship team, basketball team. They beat a charter school where they recruit players. Big, tall girls, right? Well, our girls went and tore them up. Hey. In the championship game, I think that it was the first time that they actually mercy ruled a team in the championship game. Our team had them, 75-28, 75-31, I think the final score is, with the last quarter running clock continuously. She's also a straight A student. She is also one of our lights in our tribe. I'm impressed with her. I pray for her every day that Creator keeps blessing her. She's got beautiful talents, but the most beautiful talent she has is her talent of voice. And about 20 years ago, we had some relatives that said, you know, we don't want to sing the United States national anthem in our schools. And so some Cherokee women got together and they created our Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians tribal anthem. And just this past year, no, I take that back, 2 years ago, our school started playing or letting Dvdaya sing our national anthem before all of the games at our school. And now they are going into the other county games to sing our national anthem in recognition of this being our traditional territory. So without further ado, if you all would please stand. Turn right here, baby.
Nashki higo ati hatsu shunale ni galistishka nole ni zathani gidagesha elo tohi ni zanela no le na do di kalaga tohi ni zanela tohi ni zanela Ego hita izathlani kita Igasha igadzeli gadati Galiladi gadagadati Galiladi gadagadati Tohi geishesti hideha Unathanigi da ani hioshki. Woo!
Okay, you all have a seat. Thank you, Dvdaya. As I said, we're waiting for Principal Chief. He does have a busy schedule, and we're hoping he would come in before morning's over with. But until then, the next guest that I want to introduce couldn't make it here today. And so when I got the call, she said, Miss, you talk for me. That was our first woman chief of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indian. Principal Chief Joyce Dugan was elected in 1995, and she was our first woman chief for the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indian. During that time, she saw it important for us to buy and purchase land, our traditional land. That's what we have to do nowadays, guys. And she purchased the land that is known as Dvdaya, our mother town. And she was the only one-term chief because a lot of people said, well, why is she spending $1 million on that? We can't build nothing on there. We can't do nothing on there. And that's not why she purchased the land as principal chief. She knew as a matriarch our societies are matrilineal, that we needed to have Mothertown, Gdua, back into our hands, into our arms. And so she purchased that land, and we waited for 20 years until 2 years ago that it was finally put into trust for the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. Chief Dugan was also here when we had the 7th Protecting Mother Earth, and that's why we invited her to come again so that she could reflect. But like she said, she's got some doctor's appointments she couldn't miss today, and so she wanted me to welcome you all here. She will be by in a couple of, within the next couple of days. But if you would really like to see her before then, my next guest, Miss Cherokee, Scarlett Gigage, is having an event at the Museum of the Cherokee People this evening at 5 o'clock. So I'll let her clear that up. So this evening's free, so if you want to go to the museum and visit with Miss Cherokee, you are welcome to do that. And the reason I asked Miss Cherokee to come, not only is she our Miss Cherokee, I'm going to brag on her a little bit too. Our Miss Cherokee, Gigage, that's how you say Scarlett, red in our language, is a graduate of Duke University, a recent graduate of Duke University. And once she got her degree, guess what she did? She came home and she enrolled in our Cherokee Language Adult Master's Program. She is now graduate of this past week of our Cherokee Language Adult Master's Program. Where for the last 2 years since she graduated from Duke, she has been immersed with our fluent speaking Cherokee people. And we have a selection of dedicated members of our tribe who really want to learn our language. And I appreciate Miss Cherokee, Gigage, for not only achieving her goals of education, but more importantly, worth any degree or anything else, is knowing her language. That's why I asked Miss Dvdaya Swimmer came. She was one of our first students in our immersion school known as the New Gdua Academy, where they would take our children from 18 months until 6th grade and immerse them into the language. So I want to thank you for giving us this time, and I want to ask Miss Cherokee to come up and say a few words, whatever lays upon your heart. But yes, Miss Cherokee, Gigage guy.
Stand over there. Well, ski, Missy. Galele gaski. Well, Shio Nagad. Shio. That's how we say hello. Shio. All right, I'll stop. Good. Gigage dagodo, Tosco nanki agodated, Aniwodihi, Zinigila, Nele, Galele God, Zigedo ha, Goshunale, Nele, Otzali Heliga. Oh, Hawa. Okay, sorry. Hawa, Shio Nagad, Gigage dagodo, Nole, Tosco nanki agodated, Aniwodihi, Zinigila, Nole, Galeeliga, Zigedoha, Goshunale, Screw Otzali Heliga, Negada, Hitsedo, Otzali Heliga, Negad, Hitsiluta, Ogenasha, Ostigageli, Hawa, Nole, Ayanu to, Iagayon, Toskozo, Nele Toskanunk, Igohid, Udetian Sidisa, Gangwashu Yagisa, Ostiagoda, Zalagi, Haneha, Alid Zalagi, Agaya, Miss Cherokee, Zudoan. no le skina klamap zalagi gawoni hi steeds o gatana utodole gwask dagi luistane dak skoda skina nakine iga gesha ne la du sine gesha ostiga sku ashe no she dagi luistane klamap. I'll explain, but ski, thank you all so much for, inviting me to speak. I want to say Itza Yaleyelite. I'm grateful to you all, to the organizers. This is a huge, huge, huge event. When we come down this hill and I saw all of this, I was like, this is really going to be a good conference. There's lots of people here. There's a lot happening. And I want to say thank you to the IEN and then to the ECO, and everything for putting this on, so ski. And I'll also translate what I said earlier. I just said, my name is Gigage, or Scarlett Guy. I'm 24 years old. I live in the Paint Town community. And I'm Miss Cherokee for the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians for the 2023 through 2024 year. I also said I was working in Clamath, and what I tried to say was that I graduated on the 18th of this month from the program after 2 years. And it was bittersweet. And then what I tried to say is I think I'm still working there. I come to work this week, and maybe they'll contract me to do some stuff until a position opens or something. So, because I do want to go back into the program, that is my passion, is learning the language and trying to learn as much as I can so that I can help with our tribe's revitalization efforts to pass it on to the generations coming behind us, to build this bridge between the generational gap, that people talk about with our elders knowing it, and now that our kids are starting to learn with our immersion schools, we do have a generational gap of adults that don't know the language, and that's sort of why the Cherokee Language Master Apprentice Program, the adult program, was started here at our tribe. So I just wanted to also talk a little bit about the role of Miss Cherokee. When I ran for Miss Cherokee, it was because my coworkers convinced me that they thought I would do a good job. And I went, and talked to my bosses and told them, if I run and I win, that means I might be having to miss work, but language will still be my priority. And so I, never really tried to miss what we call speaker days. On the days our speakers are there, Monday through Thursday, they take Friday off. And I remember telling them, I just really want to highlight the language and show people we can use the language outside the classroom, and show people that this program can help sort of bridge this gap, I guess, this generational gap. And so I really do try to use the language as much as I can. I try to highlight it and center events around it. One of the events I host twice a month since November has been what I call the Cherokee Coffee Hour. It's inspired after an event that a professor, Ben Fry, he's EBCI as well. He was a Chapel Hill professor, and he hosted an event called that. And I asked if I could do it as well. And it's basically where twice a month we'll get together at the local coffee shop, Qualla Java, and just try to talk in Cherokee. All levels are welcome, so you can come and learn and just have a place to practice outside of the classroom. And I'm very, very, on that note, I want to say I'm very grateful to Saul Bigwitch. He's a first language fluent speaker of the Cherokee language here in Cherokee, and he comes to every single coffee hour. And it's so, so helpful having a speaker there so that way we can just keep learning outside the classroom as well. So I just want to thank him. And I'm also recently just started a panel discussion series called Cherokee Worldview because I wanted to sort of host events with guest speakers where we as Cherokee people could learn from our own community members, our history, our culture, and just really how we view the world is important, and why it's important to discuss that and understand our sense of place in this world. That's one of the Cherokee core values, is sense of place. And our first one, it was about the Cherokee language, and I think it went well. It was the Cherokee language, how we can learn philosophy, culture, and history through our language. And then the one tonight, Cherokee Worldview, Anitzalagi, Anikaduwagi, Anigeya, is what I titled it. So what I'm trying to say there is Cherokee Gaduwa women because there's a few different names we call ourselves in Cherokee. We have Dzalagi, Gatuwagi, Aniyoia. So that'll be tonight, and it's in the Museum of the Cherokee People in the multi-purpose room. Refreshments start at 5:30. The panel starts at 6. The panelists for tonight's discussion on Cherokee women, Gadua women in leadership, are former Chief Principal Joyce Dugan, EBCI Supreme Court Justice Brenda Juanita Pipestem, Tanya Carroll, who's Department Manager of the Ray Kinsland Leadership Institute, and then our teen Miss Cherokee, Kendra Tala Postoke. And I invite you all to come. Last time, my last panel, I think there was less than 20 people there, and so I only ordered enough food for like 30 people, but you can still come anyway, and we'll see how many people we can fit in that room. It might have a max capacity of 50, I'm not sure, but we'll just see how it goes. So you're welcome to come. These Cherokee Worldview events are geared toward the Cherokee community, but I think it's kind of serendipitous that this lined up with the conference in town on protecting Mother Earth and just centering the importance of women in our communities. So I'm just rambling now, I'm sorry, but shki, and thank you all so much. Let me know if you have any questions.
The fire is ready. I'm going to let Hanford, let him say a few words real quick.
Thank you. So we got fire. Woo! And I've never had to encounter so much humidity in my life, especially when it comes to doing something so sacred, so powerful. The 5, 6 of us out there now, maybe 7 or 8 of us out there. And we found a piece of flint, which probably saved the whole thing right now because we were out there, sweating. I think giving too much water right now. We're trying to preserve some of that. So I'm glad that, with the brothers out there that helped me get this fire going so that we can carry on with the next stage of this passing the fire from Squally from Washington State. And we traveled here with not only my family, some of my younger ones, but my brothers here that came with us. We drove 5 days with the fire. But when we held the fire for the 6 years, it stayed at the school. And the school is where we fought for our fishing rights with my grandfather and my grandmother and my uncles. This is that 50-year anniversary. So when they said, we're hosting PME over in North Carolina, I couldn't wait. I could not wait. I'm glad to be here. I know it's for us being in this kind of weather. Whew. Got my auntie out there, just flew in from the state also. I know she's suffering in this weather, but thank you to IAN for bringing us here and doing this. So whenever you're ready, I'll be out there with the coals from our fire from 6 years ago.
This morning, our family is going to be accepting this fire. And a lot of times I don't understand or know why things happen, and I found out that things happen for a reason. And 99% of the time, Creator makes it happen that way. Just like with starting the fire, these things that we have to take time to do, right? Because we could do real instamatic. But this morning as we were talking, I looked at my sister. Lisa Montalongo is the local coordinator for this event. She's actually the one that organized with me to help get all of this put up. But as we sat and looked at each other, our mothers came to us. My mother and her mother. And 28 years ago, they were here doing the 7th Protecting Mother Earth Conference. And so I called my family together and I said, we have to take responsibility Whether we like it or not, Creator has us here today to take that responsibility. And on behalf of our mothers, Nora Montalongo and Lawana West Crowe, my mother, our family is going to accept that fire. Our nephew Carlos, who has been helping with the sweats and with that fire, is a sun dancer, dancing up in Wambalee, South Dakota, and Dickie Moose Camp's Sundance. That's where me and my husband went to pray for our family. This is what I talked about when I said about going to ceremony and learning my traditional ways. And so before I let Tom introduce our board president, she is from the Arctic Circle. I have a lot of people to thank that helped us put us here. Of course, it's Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians and Principal Chief Michelle Hicks, our Eastern Band of Cherokee Indian Tribal Council. They passed a resolution to give us the lease for this property to put this event on, and we appreciate that. We appreciate Deer Clan Production, a tribally owned production company. We're trying to use everybody in our community to bring this together. So we want to thank Deer Clan Productions for setting up all the tents, the sounds, the tables, chairs, everything. We appreciate them. Thank you, Deer Clan. So how did you like breakfast this morning? I want to thank Gwich'in Indian Wisdom Initiative. Gigage mentioned Scarlett, Charlie Bigwitch, fluent speaker. But our relative Tyson Sampson, two-spirit relative, she learned from my auntie, my dad's sister, who is Tyson's great-great-grandmother. And as a little baby, he was underfoot in the kitchen. My Aunt Leuna, during our Cherokee Fair, would have a food booth. And she would feed thousands of people a day for 6 days. 5 days. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of our fair. From 11 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. All traditional foods. Tyson learned that from his great-grandmother, from his grandmother, from his mother, to him. And so when we were reaching out and looking at what is an Indigenous just transition, we wanted to highlight our traditional foods. And so while you'll have the eggs and some sausage and maybe some bacon and all the foreign foods is what we call them, because chickens and pigs and those animals are foreign to us. They were brought here, right? Those aren't our traditional foods. We ate turkey. We ate deer. We ate squirrel. We even ate a groundhog. They're good. So you see, those are our traditional foods. And so we said, okay, then we want to feed our guests our traditional meals. When we fed Tom, he ate his whole plate, and he said, you know, if I was in a restaurant and I ate a whole plate, I would feel bloated, full, and tired, and ready to take a nap. But the brother said after he ate a plate of our food, when he came to do a site visit, he said the food absorbed into his body. And I went, duh. Everything you ate comes from this earth, right? Everything that we sourced greens, we sourced berries, we planted 500 potatoes down in Gadua for this gathering. So everything you're eating for the next 4 days is sourced here, raised here, brought here for you to enjoy. And my daddy always said this: if you go away from here saying that you're hungry, it's your fault. Hey. So with that, I wanted to thank Gwich'in Indian Wisdom Initiative and Tyson, all of the people that you see that are non-native that are working in the kitchen, took training called right relationship training. They're here to serve. This is Indigenous space for our Indigenous people to share, to speak our truths, to be safe in this place. And so with that, I wanted to thank our food groups. We have a whole list of other folks that we'll have lined up, but I know it's kind of warm in here, so I'm going to now turn this over to Tom so he can introduce our board chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Missy. Thank you, Lisa Montalongo. Thank you, members of the ECO, Eastern Cherokee Organization. And we're really thankful and really proud of the people here who put this together on the ground. A lot of planning to do everything that we see here. They made plans to welcome you here and take care of you. A lot of youth. I saw youth, young people here helping out. A lot of good people here, and just really thankful. I want to. I mentioned earlier before we started that we have a representative of our board of directors of the Indigenous Environmental Network, that we were asked by elders, asked by women's societies, asked by the youth, asked by the Two-Spirit back in the formation years of IEN in 1990, 1991, 1992. It didn't just take 4 years, but it's taken a number of years to put this network together. Not just to follow a white man's system of a nonprofit, but it was a long, hard process, putting the minds and hearts of many different community people from the grassroots who are fighting and struggling against industrialization back then, fighting against environmental destruction of the homelands, toxic contamination of our women, our bodies, persistent organic pollutants that bioaccumulate, biomagnify in the bodies of our women, our elders, all these different issues. We wanted to address it and take it on and put a stop to it. And we wanted to lift up our own stories and lift up our own traditional ways of how we bring our medicines together, because the colonizers don't want us to use our medicines of spirituality, our medicines that make us strong, healthy, wise. So we had to confront all of that decolonization process starting back then. So that and many more were the reasons to come together and to sing our songs. To sing our songs, because as many of you know, that world out there does not like for us to sing our songs. They will try to shut us down. When we bring our hand drums to a direct action, they try to shut down our singing and our hand drums. You know how that is. So when we stood up in the 1990, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, those formative years, we were a threat to the fossil fuel industry, a threat to the nuclear power industry, the uranium mining. Some of you, like Mr. Manny Pino, raise your hand, from Acoma, New Mexico. They took on the uranium industry at Acoma and Laguna, and they had to do their own studies to study the health effects to their people. So it's health related too. It was economics too. So it became an economic justice issue as well. Some of our own uncles and dads, aunties, on tribal councils, they signed agreements with mining corporations. But in one part of me, I understood that because they're trying to look for money because it costs money to run our nations. But it was our grassroots, like, for an example, Faith Gemmill, who I'm going to introduce as our president of our board of directors, on how her people way up there at the top of the world at Gwich'in took on the industrialized complex of dirty energy, proposals to open up the calving grounds of the caribou, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. I know she's going to tell you a little bit about that. And to carry that fight way up there in Alaska to put a stop to it. And how they even had to utilize the white environmental organizations to stand with them and say, where are you to defend the rights of the Gwich'in, the rights of our indigenous people? And sometimes that's the challenge. They don't understand who we are. So this 4 days, we're going to talk about some of the issues of how do we build around building solidarity. What are the principles of engagement and building and being part of a global movement to stop what's going on right now? The conservative right all over the world is trying to initiate the termination of indigenous peoples. We're at really bad times right now. We have to put our minds and hearts together. They were an example of building alliances in Washington, D.C. around challenging white environmentalists to support them to stop the opening up of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. So those are things of many of you I've talked to already. Some of you, we talked about this just 2 days ago with relatives that came here from South America. So at this point, I'm going to introduce Faith Gemmill as our president of our board. She's going to welcome you on behalf of our network.
I'm melting. Good morning. Egwadat shenjet ginhi. Jititatak divenjet quinzi quatsi. Din nan and jitagui and din nin and jitagui and di tsu di tsi nai and jitagui and and sal nai and jitagui and I and jitih nuts at height night now. It took me about the same time it took me to fly back to Alaska from Dubai, 26 hours. It took me 24 hours to get here yesterday. So I'm a little bit discombobulated. But it's so good to be here and spend time among the people. We're honored to be here among the Cherokee in your own traditional homelands. And we just want to thank and extend our gratitude to Missy, Lisa, Amy, and the whole crew, Tyson, for putting this event on, the Cherokee Nation for hosting and helping and assisting. It's a little bit hot, but it's beautiful. We have a crew of Alaskans here. They're all feeling what I'm feeling. But there's a little river over there we can just jump in every break. I even bought this little fan with a little mister, and the battery died. But it's like being in a sweat lodge all day. Yeah. But I'm really happy to be here as the president of Indigenous Environmental Network Board of Directors. On behalf of the Board of Directors, I extend graciousness, thankfulness to the hosts and to all of you for being here with us to discuss the important issues that our nations face. I got involved with Indigenous Environmental Network when I was 19 years old. They came to Alaska, and my people, we were fighting to protect the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. It's still there, it's still protected. And going to the first Indigenous Environmental Network conference that I went to, I met Missy and Lisa and the Cherokee people, and they invited me down here for their conference. I wasn't able to come then, but I'm glad I'm here now, 20, 30 years later. Yes, but it's very important for us to have these gatherings right now on the land with each other. As Tom was talking about, our people, the times we're in right now are these are critical times. Every person that is here is meant to be here in this time. And we are here to make a difference. And these gatherings are so important for us to come together, to network with each other, strategize on our issues, do some healing, wellness, and put our minds together to make a better future for our children. Right now, in Alaska, one of the biggest issues we face is climate change. The ground is literally melting beneath us up there. And in the summers, we're burning up. So for us, it's very important that we're able to come together in places like this to discuss how we're all going to move forward in these hard times. So I'm very glad we're here in this beautiful territory to talk about the issues such as climate change, climate justice, extractivism, just transition, nukes, mining, all of these issues that impact our people in a negative way. Today's a beautiful day to be with each other in this beautiful territory. And I see that the Cherokee Nation representative principal chief is here. So I'd like to hand the mic over.
Thank you, Faith. We have our tribal council session today, and our chief has to preside over tribal council. So he was waiting for us to give him the call, but he also is a very busy man. So at this time, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Principal Chief, Mr. Michelle Hicks. He is a 4-term Principal Chief. He was a 3-term Principal Chief from 2003 to 2015. Then he took a little break, and then he was reelected this past general election for his 4th term. He's a good friend of mine. We kind of kicked it at Cherokee High School together, and grew up around here together. But I'm very honored to have him here to welcome you to our lands. So, Principal Chief Hicks.
Shio. Oshigwaja? Yeah. Good, good. All stun. So thank you, Missy, for that that opening. You know, my Cherokee name is Diothloski, which is wood carver, and I found something that made me feel different. When I started understanding the purpose of and the meaning of a piece of wood or a root, or just seeing a tree limb. As I become an artist, I started seeing things differently. And over time, with my experience, I've been around a long time. I'll be 60 in September, Lord willing. Missy is a year older. Yeah. And wiser. Not Budweiser, but wiser. But I started looking at things differently. And when I have a piece of wood in my hand, I don't think about anything else other than the vision for the work. And it's from a mental health perspective, and I know many of you can relate to this. When you find your passion and you put your heart and your soul into it, you know what the end's going to be, but there's a process to get to the end. And sometimes it takes you a little more time to really to know what your heart's telling you, to know what your mind's telling you. And the reason I'm saying this is there's a process to all the work that we do. Just like Miss Cherokee, I am so impressed with her, and I haven't really shared that with her, how she presents herself and the progress that she has made with the Cherokee language. And she's creating that group of young men and women, are creating such a foundation for Cherokee that it's amazing to me. And the difficulty for them is, as being chief or being on a council or being in any kind of tribal leadership, is you have a burden. You wear a burden to make sure that we're doing right for our people when it comes to environmental issues, that we keep the water clean. When it comes to building, that we make sure that graves are protected. When we think about the growth of the tribe, it's not all about the money. We have to have it. We have to have the money to do resources, to do services. But that should not be our focus. Every one of us coming from tribal nations should understand that we all have a responsibility to take care of what we've been given. And hopefully, we make it better. We make it better for those next generations. And I know that's part of the focus of this event and this conference, and we do appreciate all of you all being here, and we welcome you, to our sovereign territory. And you're truly on sovereign territory. I hope you just don't see it. I hope you feel it. That a nation, the Eastern Band Cherokee, we're a proud nation. Like many tribes, we've had a hard history, but we're resilient. We're survivors. And we'll continue to be that way. I was just in Hawaii. It's on my bucket list of things to do. I've been to 47 states prior to last week. Hawaii was one of the last 3. I like Alaska and Oregon. And Lord willing, I'm going to get there. I'll have all 50 in. But the importance of saying that is I was listening to a TV show while I was in Hawaii this past week. And it was focused on language. And it was focused on culture. And it is amazing to me the similarities of how the battles that we've had to maintain our language and our culture and our traditions, it's no different for the Hawaiians. It's no different for, Crow Creek Nation of South Dakota, or Lower Brule, or the Crow Nation of Montana. It's no different. We all have those struggles. We all have those battles. But our responsibility as tribal leaders and the people of our tribes, tribal members, community members, is continue to make sure that we understand the position of our tribes, the sovereignty, and the respect that we deserve. How many times do you hear a tribal name in any election process? How many times do you hear it? Not very much, right? We represent that less than 1% of this nation. But we're the foundation of this nation. We're not going to forget it. We're not going to let others forget it. So as you guys go through, over the next few days, just keep these things in mind, that we have responsibility to protect. We have responsibility to educate. And we have a responsibility to stand strong. We have to stand strong on what we know is right. That's what makes us sovereign nations, and that's what's going to continue to keep our nation strong. And in the end, our tribes are still going to be here because we are that resilient body. We're that people that are survivors. And we have strength beyond any other group in this United States because this is our land. This is our blood. It's our sweat. It's our tears. It's our graves. And we're never going to forget that. Thank you for allowing me to say just a few words this morning. God bless each one of you. And I hope you have a great ceremony this week. Shkin. Dvdaya go home you. Hawan. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Principal Chief Hicks. Really appreciate his support. I came here a couple times in preparation. It was really good to meet Mr. Hicks and a photo op. Do another one. Faith, come up here. Mr. Hicks, it takes me back that a lot of you may not know some of the history of the struggle as American Indian, as Alaska Natives, along with our relatives and brothers and sisters from Canada, calling themselves First Nations, Aboriginal Inuit. Here in the North, having to take on one of the hearts of colonialism, everything that comes with it. The Queen of England and the politics creating the Parliament in Canada. In the United States, the settlers creating United States, Washington, D.C. There's a long history. And the millions of our people that died of diseases and fighting and defending our people just in the North. And as we organize to develop a process of shaking hands with our relatives from the global South, some of you are here from South America, from Mexico, Central America, we welcome you here. And to be able to come together, coming together in struggle. So, in 1991, there was a meeting here that Cherokee Nation, they hosted a meeting of the U.S. Government Environmental Protection Agency called the EPA. It was during that time, in 1991, that some of us were reacting to a report that there was environmental injustice, environmental racism within the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency that was not protecting our lands, our territories, and the health of our people. And we asked them in those early years, why aren't you protecting our homelands like you protect white people land? There was racism. Why do you allow toxic waste corporations to come in our land and dump toxic waste in our land? Why are you allowing mining corporations to come into our land and territories and get signed off permission, contracts to destroy our ecosystem, destroy Mother Earth? Then the years later, the corporations say they cleaned up the mess that they created in our homeland. But it's just a lie. How many of you that are here from Brazil, Colombia, South America, raise your hands where this story is similar? Yes. Thank you, the interpreters. So, in 1991, I worked for one of the largest tribes in Minnesota, where I come from. But my mom is from Navajo, Dine country, and my other relatives, my other family are Dakota. How many Dine people here in Navajo? Raise your hand. All right. We, on the Navajo Dine side, we are related to the Gwich'in, way up in Alaska. So we have relations through language. On the Dakota side, we have relatives who say they are Catawba. Who any Catawbas here? From the eastern South Carolina. They speak a similar language of the Dakota. So we are related through language as well. So I was working for Red Lake Nation back then. And my responsibility was to close up 3 open dumps. The government didn't take care. They didn't worry about this. They just allow people to throw their toxic waste, garbage every day, oven cleaners, everything you can think of in your garbage. Just throw it in the back 40, the back area. Some people light it up and burn it. Low temperature incineration. That was happening throughout indigenous lands. Open landfills. All the toxic fumes going into the air, children coming out. No protection. So we came here in 1991. Cherokee Nation hosted a U.S. Environmental Protection Agency meeting here, National Tribal Environmental Protection Conference. All government, with tribal governments. And I was one of the speakers here. Not as IEN yet, not as Indigenous Environmental Network yet, but representing a tribal nation, a government, where we have to clean up contaminated water. We have to take care of the environmental protection of this nation that has almost 1 million acres of land. No money to do it. No money to do it. Who's taking responsibility for environmental protection in what some of us call Indian country, the indigenous territories and lands in the United States. When they take care of the lands and territories of the state governments, they give them big money, but just leave the tribes aside. Well, they broker, they contract and the government brings in mining corporations into our territories. When we raised questions back then, the tribal leadership sometimes says, well, we don't need to do anything. The multi-million-dollar corporations who are coming in to develop mining, they're going to say they're going to take care of the contamination. They say they're going to clean it up. And they're giving us millions and millions of dollars. So money is playing into this. And I mentioned environmental economic injustice. Our people generally are poor people. When we compare ourselves to capitalism, to the money of the U.S. economic system, but we're wealthy, rich people in our culture and language. So that's where this movement of community, tribal members, grassroots standing up saying, no more. We're going to organize and put a stop to environmental racism in our indigenous territories. No more. So we've been organizing to do this. Anytime we organize as indigenous peoples and we liberate ourselves to do things our way, not the U.S. government way. It's like the industries and the corporations and the capitalism and the banks and the world. They don't like us then. They want us to be good Indians. Indigenous, good Indians, good indigenous people. Don't raise no problems. And I met some of you here. You are fighting the fight back home. We're going to shake your hand for 4 days. We're going to celebrate together and develop strategy for the future of our children. Indigenous just transition to do things differently than colonialism and build solutions to have healthy, sustainable communities, to decolonize our mind and our heart. Indoctrination that has been practiced. People ask me throughout the years when I became involved with the Indigenous Environmental Network, they say, we know what you guys are against. We know what your women are against. We know what your youth are against. But what are you for? I had politicians ask me that question in the United States, California, for an example. What are you for? As if they don't like us to do this negative, taking on the fight, taking on the struggle. They want us to be positive and say, what are you for? It gets me frustrated, yes. But I say, we're for building healthy communities. Yes. We're for not only our own communities, but the world, to build an economic system that is about life, not death. A living economy that is healthy. That's what we're for, and to work towards that. And that's part of our divestment investment work with some of you here. Grassroots for Global Justice Alliance is here. Divestment, changing the economic system. Questioning wealth. What is wealth? Capitalism. If we're against capitalism, then what are we for? That's a deep question for us as Indigenous people. If we're fighting against capitalism, what are we for? Are we for Marxism? Are we for socialism? So those are things that in my generation, I'm 71 now. We started to ask some of these questions when I was younger. And now we have a responsibility for our younger generation to take this responsibility on. What are we fighting for? And what's our strategy to do this? So this meeting in 91, I was working for one of the larger tribes in Minnesota with over close to 1 million acres of land to develop an indigenous-based environmental protection program. A goal for this nation to develop its own indigenous laws. Its own indigenous laws. And develop its own clean, some of you may understand some of the terminology, to develop its own Clean Air Act program, its own indigenous law and protection of its air, its own indigenous law and protection of its water system. Not the state of Minnesota, not the federal government, EPA, our own laws. That's the mentality of the Indigenous Environmental Network. To build our communities as Indigenous nations the strength that we can take care of our own. It's a decolonization process. Some of you are from the oceans. Oceans have its own legal systems, I learned. They have its own law from Hawaii, Pacific, Alaska, California, coastal, and our indigenous people in those areas are also going through the same process, re-identifying, bringing up their own indigenous law around the oceans. Militarization and toxic waste in the Pacific. We have some people here representing the Pacific Climate Justice Alliance. Monica, I think I saw you earlier. Monica, are you here? Micronesia people from here are here. So I wanted to give some background. This meeting here in 1991, I was one of the ones raised my hand. I asked the administrator, the assistant administrator of the US EPA, are you going to give all the tribes more money so we can protect our lands? We found out that of all the United States environmental protection money that goes to states, we get 1/10 of 1% of the US EPA funding to develop environmental protection. That is environmental racism. And from that raising the hand, other tribal government environmental coordinators and directors started to scratch their head to say, we need to stand together to demand funding so tribes can develop environmental protection programs. That's what we had to do, and that's what the struggle still is with tribal government and nations. I'm proud of those tribal staff that are heading up tribal environmental protection programs. And they're cutting the barrier that exists and created by the US government to work separately from the tribal Department of Natural Resources, when we need to work together defending the natural resources, conservation officers, fish and game, and work with environmental protection. But IEN is deeper than that in our analysis. We're taking on the system. We're challenging the system. The government does not like us when we have direct action, when we have protests, when we have marches and rallies. They don't like that. When we go to Washington, D.C., and bring our drums, our ceremonies, some of our relatives at the prairie lands bring their horses, horse rides, to defend our rights. So we have to elevate nonviolent direct action to lift up our voices. Then the media said, hey, look at those Indians, you know? So we have different tactics that we do utilize: regulatory, direct action, media, communications. We need to tell our story. That's why it's good to have media here to put our voices out there. Yeah. So there was a positive of that meeting here in 1991. The US EPA was embarrassed when the tribe said, you're not giving us enough funding so we can hire staff to protect the water, the air, pollution prevention, solid waste, all these things. I can say now there must be, from the funding back then, 100 times more funding now. Tribes have developed programs. But as grassroots tribal members of these different nations, you know you have to still keep them going. Support them, but demand them to do more. Because from upstairs coming down, the system, the matrix, doesn't like them to do more. You know what I mean. The World Bank is active in the global south. So that's one of the things we want to talk about here. It's good that you're here. I want to say this afternoon when we're done, we're going to have a break and then have lunch. And there are workshops this afternoon. Is Talia Boyd here? Talia? Okay, Talia is our anti-mining organizer. And she put together a workshop to talk about rare earth and mining. She has a number of speakers, so that's a workshop this afternoon. We haven't put numbers on the workshop stations. We're going to do that during the break between here, lunch, so that there's numbers and titles to where the workshop are being held. So Talia Boyd on critical transition around minerals. And some people are still, some flights have been canceled, some flights rescheduled, but we got some good speakers. Mr. Noisy, are you here? From Apache. Nosy. Hey, Nosy. And other speakers here are here. And also after another workshop is the youth that are organizing beyond intergenerational organizing. Morgan, are you here? Morgan. Okay, Morgan's outside there too. Yeah, Morgan brings plenty. She's one of our fellows in the media program. She works with our Leave It in the Ground campaign too on fossil fuels. She's very familiar of that issues around CO2 pipelines, carbon capture and storage going through her homeland in the prairie lands. There's some youth that are here for that to speak. Justice, are you here? Justice, another board member, a youth. He's over there too, I guess. Okay, Justice, you back there? Okay, he's raising his hand. Justice is on there. one of our young board members, and he's been studying what I've been talking about as well. Autumn Harry, Debbie Harry's daughter, or no, niece, from Paiute country, Nevada. She's another speaker. So that's the youth. The another one is Treaties Matter. Michael Lane, are you here? So who's a treaty person? I saw Ron Lehman. Are you here, Ron? Ron's raising his hand way in the back. He comes from so-called Canada, but from the Beaver Lake Cree Nation, and they identify with other First Nations in their alliance, confederacy called Treaty 6. So there's a good session talking about why Indigenous treaties are important, why they matter. As we talked about earlier, there is a termination agenda by corporations, by governments, northern governments, industrialized governments, governments of the South, to terminate our status. In the South, they're fighting for their titling of indigenous lands, land rights. The people I met yesterday from Brazil, they talked about that in Brazil. Some other speakers on that also. They invited Mr. Manny Pino to sit in on that. Manny Pino, you can raise your hand. So another session is on reclaiming feminisms. Reclaiming feminisms. That session is a priority of our Indigenous women in our territories, in Canada, US, Alaska, but throughout the world. The Indigenous women, as far as you start studying colonialism, on how the identity and the power and importance of our women was a threat to colonization and the concepts of dominion. Dominion. That lifted up male dominance and male dominion. That came with Christianity too. That came with the governments that came to this country, of putting down the leadership of our women. So that's going to be a workshop. Is Claire, are you here? She's moderating that. Some good speakers. Jeannie Shenandoah from the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and Debbie Harry, who is a board member of IEN as well. Another workshop, it's a demonstration, kind of a training. Sharon Lango used to be director of the Ruckus Society. And I know she's trying to get her today early so she can do it. It's on Nonviolent Direct Action, 101 Introduction. And those are the workshops this afternoon. On the first session, 1:30 to 3. We're probably going to be bumping that back a little bit because we're running a little bit after the time we set. Because there's workshops after that, half hour break. So the session 2 workshops is Carbon Pricing Introduction 101. Thomas Joseph, he's raising his hand back there. He's going to be a trainer on that session. He may ask some of you that are familiar on this to help him. The other 2 weren't able to make it, but That's important. Again, I talked to some of the relatives from Brazil and Colombia. They're concerned about this discussion on how the solution for climate change, the mitigation for climate change, involves a market-based solution. It involves climate capitalism called carbon markets, carbon trading, carbon offsets, carbon pricing, reduction of emissions from deforestation and degradation. There's many terminologies. Nature-based solutions now. Sounds good. But please learn more about why is this not a solution. It allows the fossil fuel industry to greenwash. They're the ones buying carbon credits. They're buying the carbon in the trees. They're not cutting back emissions. They're not cutting back. They're saying we're participating in carbon offsets. So learn more about that. Next one is this afternoon from 3 to 5 is Indigenous Water Knowledge and Ethics. Mona Palaka, are you here? Mona. Mona, all right, Mona. Some of you remember Mona. She's one of the 13 Indigenous Grandmothers Council. Yeah, and so she's heading up that workshop, some good speakers on Indigenous water knowledge and ethics. Next one is mining laws, policies, and international mining. That's a big workshop. Jordan Harmon. Jordan, Jojo, are you here? She's around. Some good speakers from there with Talia Boyd representing. And another one is Just Transition with the Just Transition Alliance and the Labor Network for Sustainability and the Indigenous Just Transition. And Missy's going to be on that. Is Jose Bravo, raise your hand, with Just Transition Alliance? You moved it to tomorrow, okay. So we're going to have some updates. We still have an information booth going up, plywood, to where you can know what's scheduled. It's going to be translated. We have the translators and interpreters that are going to have to put the agenda, yeah. And then after that, there's another workshop, Indigenous Peoples of the Pacific and Climate Change, to learn what is going on in the Pacific and what is they're doing to stop climate change at the Pacific. Some of those islands are going underwater within 50 years. What are they doing? So that's the workshops. I'm sorry I had to read it through like this. We did have it planned to have a printed agenda in different languages, so you can have that. We did plan to have it on our webpage, so you can go ahead weeks ago and see it, but it didn't happen. There's a lot of things to put workshops. All the organizers of many of the workshops were calling some of you, so we're calling people to be speakers, and speakers don't return calls in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah. So it's difficult to organize many of these things. So with that, it's very good. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to have some housekeeping, but it's good to be here. And I always think of my mother. She was the person who raised me to be who I am. He said, always be proud. She's the Navajo, the Pesajini Naishli. So I carry my mom's clan. She was one of our first Native women at Navajo to get her degree in microbiology. She became a medical technologist, running the lab programs in hospitals. She wanted me to be a medical doctor, but I was a resistor. Eh? And when I took up the helm to work for the Indigenous Environmental Network, she never really accepted that. After 10 years, 15 years, she says, "Son, what is it you do again? What is it you work on? What do you do again?" So I tease that. She passed away in 2014. I'm her only child. So I'm very proud of her. She's very, very strong as an Indigenous, as a Dine woman. She's been through different administrations back on Navajo Nation. And one time, one of the chairmen did not like her outspokenness on health issues, so she lost her job. Those are realities many of you may know on work. On the other side, I'm proud, on the Dakota side, and one of my sons, I'll mention him, one of my sons is Dallas Goldtooth. Some of you may know Dallas. He has an agent now. He's in the movies. But why I mention him because in many of our communities, as we are getting older, we have to turn over responsibilities to the younger generation. In our Sundance ceremony, our Wambadi Hadeshka, Wiwang Wachipi, our Spotted Eagle Sundance back home. This is his 4th year of officiating our Sundance. We passed it on as other elders. We got together. Our teacher is Bitacha Yuhamani, Pete Catches, walks with holding coals. Senior. He was my teacher. I passed it on to my son. So ceremony is very important. Very important. The fire has its own time. That's part of the fire of understanding. But that fire had its own life. It had its own time of when it's going to start. It was a teaching, too. But as our relative Hanford came, and he was happy, he celebrated in his way to tell you the fire now is going. There will be tenders taking care of that fire. Ask permission if you go up to the fire to offer tobacco in that fire. Ask permission. There's different roles that men and women in Winktas, Two-Spirit, have. So ask for understanding over there. There's protocols. So with that, I'm going to sing one song to honor you and your relatives back home. Please stand if you can. And then we have some housekeeping by Missy. This song was taught to me by my grandpa, Pitacha Yuhamani Pikacha Sr. And he says this song is you extend your prayer, you extend your heart, your spirit, as you pray to the Holy One, Wakantanka, to have pity on you, to help you and your family and your people. There's a human nature of who we are as humans. We all thrive to be heard by the Creator. We thrive that the Creator will hear your thinking, your prayer, your voice, your heart. It makes us really happy when there's a signal or a sign that you are being heard by the Holy One, the Great Spirit. This song expresses that in many ways. The way we sing that to cast out our voice way over there. And then maybe in return, a voice comes back. How I hear you. That's the background of this song. Thank you very much. How, Medake Owase.